So let's continue on for one more week in the Christology of Irenaeus, then we'll move on to some new thoughts next week. So Irenaeus also had some really interesting navigating to do in the world that he was in. In the world that he was in, there was two main subcurrents within theology and Christology. You see, the church at this stage of its life was just forming its ideas and its understanding. It was just articulating its gospel. It hadn't even formed what you would say is the Bible. They hadn't even formally agreed on the books of specifically the New Testament, but even the Old Testament had some pieces that weren't totally finalized. So everything was in flux, and yet there was this sense in which those who were loyal to the gospel as it had been handed down from the apostles to the earliest church leaders and now to trusted bishops, they were the stewards of the Orthodox Christian faith in its infancy. And yet there were other thought areas and other currents that would pull it in different directions. So two of the main ones that Irenaeus had to contend with, one was called the Judaizers. And the Judaizers would propose that, you know what, yes, there was this fellow called Jesus, but really he doesn't offer us anything new. He's a continuation of what God was always doing, because he gives us teaching. God the Father gave us teaching. He brings us a sacrificial idea. There's lots of sacrifice in the Old Testament. There's miracles in the Old Testament. He raises the dead. That happens too. So he doesn't really give us anything tremendously new. We can find almost everything that Jesus does somewhere within David or Ezekiel or Elijah or Daniel. All the way through the Old Testament, we see some of these great themes prefiguring Christ, but they wouldn't see it as something novel and new. They would just see it as, well, he's sort of a messianic-ish, David-ish figure, but really nothing to get too excited about. So they would downplay Jesus and say that the continuity is so obvious that it's really nothing exciting. On the other hand, way out on the other extreme, you would have the Gnostics. And the Gnostics would say, look, this Jesus who is the one of the new covenant, he is radically different than the one of the old covenant, the God of the old covenant. In fact, they're obviously two completely different gods, and they've got nothing much in common. And the God of the Old Testament was severe, and the God who we see in Jesus is obviously much kinder. And the Old Testament God was into judgment and wrath. The New Testament Jesus is into blessing and forgiveness. And so there's radical discontinuity, saying that they're so unlike each other, they're unrecognizable. And they obviously are different gods, which is also a false gospel. That's not good theology. So what Irenaeus does is he looks at them both and says, you're both actually completely wrong, although there are things within what you're saying which are somewhat correct. So he does try and emphasize then that between the Old Testament God and the New Testament God, of course there's continuity, because it's the same God. And Jesus doesn't abolish the law, he fulfills the law. He doesn't abolish the sacrificial system, he fulfills the sacrificial system. He doesn't just make it stay the same, he does something, he supersedes it to become something ultimate within himself. And at the same time, he's saying that there's a continuity between the Old Testament and the New Testament. There's also radical discontinuity, because what Jesus is bringing is new, it is better. It is so much more. And you have heard that it was said such and such, but I say to you. So he does take the law and do something radically new with it. He does take the sacrificial system and make it ultimately fulfills it about himself. And so he teaches with this beautiful dynamic tension between pointing out all the way through the Old Testament and on into the New Testament letters, which he cites many of them without this conclusive canon that we talk about. He does this beautiful movement between the two to say, look, Jesus is actually the fulfillment of everything from the Old Testament. He is the culmination of everything we've heard about before. He is the answer to every prophet's prayer. He is the song that David has been singing from the beginning. He is all of Solomon's wisdom. He is all the Father Creator's supremacy and his most, the firstborn, the most beautiful over all creation. So Jesus is the culmination of all that was looked forward to and prefigured in the Old Testament. And he is astonishingly new and different to everything that we've known before. He is a brand new level of revelation from God. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors many times in many ways through the prophets. However, in these last days, he has spoken to us through his Son. And so there's this new word that God is speaking, and the word is Jesus. So Irenaeus, again, with this dynamic scholarship, introducing us to Jesus, who is both the continuation and this radically and beautifully new implementation of God's kingdom upon the earth. So as you read the Bible, is great to think about these things, to try and understand how is this the way it is. And in fact, the book of Hebrews is probably the best place to go for this exact conversation. If you read through the book of Hebrews, this is really the dance that's going on inside that great text. So a little bit more food for thought in our journey through Christology, and we'll see you again soon. Bless you. Peace.